going to scale in Miami. We're in the economic development zone. We're going to scale to 30 before the end of the year. And that 30 on a half city block, half acre, would be the equivalent of a 1,000-acre farm in the Midwest.
My name is Jose Moreno. On this podcast, we discuss current and future trends in the electrical industry. Welcome to the life of an electrical contractor. Welcome to the life of an electrical contractor. On this podcast, we discuss real-life experiences within the everydays of running an electrical construction business. Welcome to the life of an electrical contractor. All right, guys. So today, actually, it's a little. Look, I'm actually a little excited today because I'm bringing on a friend, a good friend. You know what? Someone that I want to say I met about a year and a half ago, and
Year and a half. Yep.
We just hit it off. You know. Hopefully he doesn't get all weird on me, but obviously he's older than me, and I looked at that as a as a means to like what I can grow into one day, right? What he's been able to accomplish in his life, right? And how he also, where we met, he was too looking to better himself still, right? Because if you follow this channel, if you follow me on the social media, you obviously realize that my life's not perfect, right? I have things going on all the time, but one constant is that I'm constantly looking to get better, right? To learn from my mistakes, right? To learn from my experiences. And then obviously, as this show is based on the life of an electrical contractor, it must bring the things that happen in my life, right? So that's why I wanted to invite my good friend Ron McKay, right? And one of the other reasons I wanted to bring him on is because of the business side that he's on. He's created this how would I say it's this next generation, this next level of agriculture, right? He's a co-founder of a company called Hammock Greens. I'm gonna let him introduce himself, but I figured I'd just kind of bring some stuff out, right? Actually, before we start, I did want to bring up the fact that he is an Eagles fan. I'm a 49ers fan, and we still love each other. So I just wanted to bring that up. Full disclosure.
I didn't feel any love after we lost the Super Bowl from you. That's for sure.
I did send him a text that said, "Hey man, the Eagle was grounded." But with that being said, now that I'm done gloating on that end, Ron, why don't you hop on and just tell us a little bit about Hammock Greens and what is Hammock Greens?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to thank you, my friend, for having me on. We've talked about this one of the first times we met. You said you were doing these podcasts, and it's an honor to be on the podcast, and I look forward to having people throughout both our communities looking at it and seeing it and learning some more about our relationship and what I do and how we met. And a little background on myself first before the company. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I mean, largest paper route in Monmouth County and Jersey, and Christmas tree sales, and then I sold boxer shorts in Villanova, and I did a little bookmaking here and there. So I mean, every aspect of entrepreneurship. And then essentially, after college, I went to Villanova. I grew up in Monmouth County, and family from Philadelphia, and went to Villanova, and I went down the Jersey Shore and started building houses during the boom, during the late 90s, and learned how to be an entrepreneur. Then the Resolution Trust Savings and Loan Crisis came in, and the first time I lost everything, and I was like 24 years old. I was in debt $6 million to the savings and loans, and I was like, oh shit. But at that age, you got the rest of your life to pick yourself up. And I was fortunate enough to get into telecom business at that point. That's when AT&T Ma Bell was being broken up, and got into. I started the prepaid phone card industry literally with 10 other guys. We got the Elvis Presley merchandising rights and put Elvis on a card, and that put us on the map. And then we got a bunch of the Philadelphia Eagles to go on the cards, and don't think I ever had a 49er on the card, but I had some Cowboys. Unfortunately, I had Roger Staubach, and Bradshaw, some of the old guard. And from that, we sold the prepaid phone card company. The athletes reinvested in us. We got into the long distance business. if you remember, a lot of the quarterbacks would do the United Way commercials and be involved in their local United Way chapters. We got the contract for the United Way. I opened up a call center in an economic development zone in South Philadelphia, and we would call the United Way people, give them discounts on long distance, and give 5% back to the cause. Sold that company, and I had a non-compete, and they didn't want the call center. The call center was, my uncle was a state senator. He got us the economic development money, and I didn't want to be disowned, so I had to find a way to use the center besides laying off 200 people in this district. And that's when outsourcing first came in. So I got into the outsourcing call center business. Fast forward, on 9/11, I was in the Caribbean looking at opportunities to bring facilities down to the Caribbean. My partners were in India. 9/11 hit. We decided it was a little safer to be in this hemisphere versus going across Afghanistan to India. And we built call centers throughout the Caribbean over a course of 20 years. And that one of the partners passed away about 17 years ago, and I then moved to Jamaica full time. And that was the lead-in to eventually Hammock Greens, because during my 17 years there, I became president of the American Chamber of Commerce for the English-speaking Caribbean. All my clients were the tourism industry, hotels, hospitality. And a lot of times I sat on a lot of boards, think tanks. And one of the things that I always saw was an issue was vegetables, produce, fresh produce. People associate the Caribbean with tropical and this and that. But really, I mean, outside of citrus, it's very difficult to grow anything in the Caribbean because of the extreme humidity and the extreme weather. So green leafy vegetables, herbs, your basils, they import almost all of it, and most of the governments tax it on the import. So I was also part of the United Nations World Tourism Organization. I was at a conference. A guy came up to me and said, listen, I'd like to do cannabis in the Caribbean. At the time, Jamaica signed a deal with Canada, and he wanted to grow the strains and the mother plants in a container in Jamaica and then export them to Toronto. That project never got off the ground because of a lot of legal issues. But I asked him, I said, the one thing I saw when I saw the cannabis growing, I was like, boy, it looks like a lot like basil. And, so I said, matter of fact, I'll butcher this, but my Italian family would call it basil vagul. So, and that was not cannabis, but it meant basil. So I said to him, can you grow basil in these things? And he said, yeah, anything green leafy, I approached him. I said, I could bring in all the hotels as clients. We could put these containers, and I'll get to what a container is in a minute, on the farms, on the hotels, and grow leafy vegetables for him. He never wanted to do it. So I started looking into it. And as a time period going that process, that was like 2019. I had moved up to Florida, got married. I was going back and forth to the Caribbean. My business was sort of running itself. I was in the technology business, outsourcing, call center, BPOs, and looking into manufacturers of these things, the people that would retrofit them. And basically what we do is we take a 40-foot freezer shipping container that's insulated. We retrofit it to make a 2,500 cubic feet farm using grow columns that vertically grow the leafy vegetables and herbs, microgreens, and use LED lighting and air conditioned systems and bring in CO2 from outside the container. It's a very technology based. And that's what really attracted me, was the integration of technology, which was my background, with agriculture. And I know when you and I first met, we talked about how, the electricity aspect of it. And, it's very, very self-sufficient because, we only run about $250 to $350 a month in electricity because of the insulation factor and a lot of the humidity being recreated from the plants breathing and living, even though eventually we'll want to go with a solar solution. So out of these containers, you can grow the equivalent of what's 30 acres outside of traditional farmland. So you imagine a farm in Oklahoma, 30 acres of farmland. We do it in a 40-foot shipping container. And that blew my mind away.
So actually that leads me into like the next question, without really going too far into Hammock Greens yet, but so really, So that when I originally met you, that was one of the things that actually caught my attention is that you said that this is, how was it again? 30 acres of farmland?
30 acres of outside land
So, so 30
growing inside a
acres.
40-foot shipping container.
So right away, what I started to come up with is how is this beneficial, right? How would this benefit versus a traditional, right? Versus traditional farming, like you just said, 30 acres of farmland in Oklahoma, right? How does that?
Right.
I'm obviously in the New Jersey, New York market. You're down in Florida. Um, there is obviously New Jersey is the green state, right? So obviously there's a
Sure.
lot of green here. There's a lot of farm here. Florida has a lot of farm, similar to what you were saying to Jamaica, right? Citrus, right?
Yep.
How would this benefit? How is this beneficial versus the traditional way of doing things?
Sure. That's a great question. And you take a look at the fact that people don't realize the land in the world is agriculture. And we're running out of land. That's number one. Two, the number one factor that affects agriculture is the consumption of water. And we're running out of water. Three, you can only grow certain times of the year when you're outside. We grow every day of the week, every day of the year. And there is also an aspect of through the fertilizers and the pesticides and herbicides used in outdoors, it's very difficult to grow organically outside because you deal with the pests, you got to use the chemicals, and you also got to use fertilizer. One issue now is we're having the problem with fertilizer because of the Ukraine war. You can't get fertilizer. They were one of the biggest producers of fertilizer in the world. So now fertilizer is an issue. Then you have the aspect of it pollutes the environment because fertilizer lets off carbons and carbon footprint. So the herbicides and pesticides get into the water lines, you know. So, and then you've got trucks that have to ship it all over the country and planes that have to ship it all over the world. There you go, more carbon emissions. So
basically, the food that we want to eat is creating the very issue that everybody's trying to fight against, right? The very
exactly.
Okay. All right.
Exactly. So we hardly use any land.
I guess on that alone, you can actually push the benefit for. I guess you're going to move into a local market is the idea, right? To have
correct. Yeah. We put the supply side right into the consumption channel. So essentially you're eating those fresh produce, fresh vegetables, leafy greens, herbs, microgreens, petites within an hour where they were grown and within days of when they were harvested.
So why don't you explain what that exactly means? Because I know I've talked to people about this. I remember we were at an event about a month ago, and one of the things they gave us was like this can of water, and it looked like it was a can of beer, and then it said liquid water or something, or liquid death, I think it said. And anyway, I met one of the I want to say early on investors. I met him at my gym, as a matter of fact, right? And where I work at. And I actually talked to him about you. I talked to him about this, and I talked to him, leafy greens and all this crap. And he's obviously a younger guy, so I'm gonna assume that he knows. But what is a leafy green exactly? Because maybe people are hearing this and it's like,
sure,
what is it?
Sure. So I mean, all your basic lettuces, your butterheads, your Boston, your romaine, then your arugulas, then all your herbs, your parsleys, your basil, your cilantro, any of the herbs that you season with that become dry herbs, or people that use them when they can get them fresh, oreganos. Then we have microgreens like wheatgrass that you juice it. I'm sure you, as a very healthy individual that you are, or juicing machine, you put the wheatgrass in, you juice it. So I mean, think about anything that's green, anything that's leafy. We also can do baby carrots, radishes. We can do the little plum tomatoes. We can do strawberries, different types of berries. The only thing we really can't do is what really is a root-based vegetable, something that grows underneath the soil. Not just the soil, not the root itself, but the whole plant grows underneath the soil and pushes out. So you think of your potatoes and your yams and your broccolis and cauliflowers, they come push out underneath the surface because we're not using any soil. We use 100% nutrients in our water, which is part of our proprietary blend, that then basically as the plants are being watered, they're also being fed the nutrients because we don't get the nutrients, natural nutrients from the soil.
So you don't actually use soil in your setup? I mean, hopefully we can get is that something that you can show, like a little video of or a picture of something?
I wish you know what, I don't want to throw all the technology off, but but eventually, if you go to we've got a great YouTube channel and it shows all our processes.
We'll put a link.
Hammock Greens has a great YouTube channel, shows the whole grow process, tours of the containers, you name it.
We'll definitely put a link on the channel to see, because that's got to be really cool how that's working. So you said trailers. So I know you basically spoke about a trailer, I guess is your standard container, right? Your shipping container. So you retrofit these containers and you obviously get them ready to do what you got them to do. The next question of this is, is this considered a new industry? And then the second part of it, Ron, is does this actually create a new job? Does it create a
Correct.
new something new? I don't know.
Great question. So essentially, it is a relative. When you think of the lifespans of industries, this is new. I always like the fact people are like, well, this company's been around since 2017. I said, okay, well, you know how far Google was around until you actually used it. So it's like, because we're relatively new to the space. Most of what's happened in the last 10 years, let's say, a lot of technology has been overlaid to make agriculture more efficient and to bring it more local. And essentially, because of all the factors I said, if you take anything that's green grows in 2 counties. 90% of what we eat in the United States that's green grows in 2 counties, Yuma County in Arizona and a county in Southern California. They both rely on the same Colorado River. The river's turning into a stream. They're having issues beyond, and then they're having pesticide issues because if you don't get enough water in there, the pests come in. So, right away, people have been looking at this over time. The first phase was to take old factories. There's a big company near you in Newark. They're pretty much the largest player in the United States, Arrow Farms. They took old brick factories in Newark and built farms inside the brick factories. Now, when we were looking at the model, one thing that the containers are relatively new, less than 5 years. And different applications of scaling it and different processes that we're using are proprietary, but people have tried doing the shipping containers. There's a couple manufacturers now that manufacture them, but nobody is scaling them to a farm. Like, for instance, we're going to scale in Miami. We're in the economic development zone. We're going to scale to 30 before the end of the year. And that 30 on a half city block, half acre, would be the equivalent of a 1,000-acre farm in the Midwest on a half city block, So most of the people that do the containers, a lot of research divisions of universities, charities, food, and things like that. So we're one of the few companies scaling it. Elon Musk's brother has another company out in the Midwest. He's doing the same thing we're doing, but he's hitting all the cold, what I call the Rust Belt cities, your Clevelands, your Columbuses, your Pittsburghs, to bring fresh greens into those areas. Where we're looking at the hospitality industry. Gotcha. That's our target market. Restaurant groups, high-end chefs.
Right, finding your niche and going after. Yeah,
just like yourself, with your business.
Yeah. So do you feel that this is obviously it's a new industry within an existing industry, and then even taking it even deeper, it's a sub within the new industry, because obviously it's niche, right? Like you said, Elon Musk's brother. That's obviously. I think what I was getting is when you were saying about the colleges and all is it becomes more like research based, right? Where you guys are actually looking to actually monetize this, right? You're looking to not only deliver something, but obviously make something from.
Correct.
So
do
you feel that it's creating new jobs or can create new jobs?
So essentially, how I brought it to the States was I was ready to launch in the Caribbean, and COVID hit. And there was this other gentleman, my partner now, who started Hammock Greens in 2017, Thomas Smitherin, and he was a chef, graduated Culinary Institute of Arts, and worked for Capitol Grill and Francis Ford Coppola in the wine business, and then he got into this business. And he had the same idea too. He wanted to do cannabis in Florida, but then when the license fees came out, $25 million, he was, priced out of the market. And then he learned how to do vegetables in these things. I got introduced to him from a manufacturer. I said, listen, I want to meet somebody who's actually scaling these things. Met with him. We hit it off. I said, you want to be a consultant on the Project Caribbean? Said, yeah. The week we were leaving to go down there, COVID hits. 3 months later, I meet with him. His business is struggling. And something in the back of my head said, you know what, I got to keep this guy viable. So I invested in the company. And then I eventually headed up our marketing, business development, and then our investor relations. And we're raising $8 million through a private placement. We've raised $3 million so far. I meet with the venture capitalists. I mentioned to you, I pitched Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank and O'Leary Ventures, things like that. So that's my role. So, but what we did at that point, after coming out of COVID, we got our global compliance, which is very difficult to get. 22 countries were compliant now with all food handling and agriculture. We signed our deal as a vendor with Cisco Foods, their FreshPoint division. They're a $40 billion company. And FreshPoint is the division that services the hospitality industry, hotels. And they're in Pompano Beach, we're in Miami. They pick up twice a week. And we're in the inner city providing jobs in the inner city, jobs that don't exist. And why we're providing the jobs, we're teaching the people and how to eat properly. We've created a foundation, a nonprofit called rightnowfortoday.org. We do a summertime program with the kids, the high school kids, through the 4-H's. Matter of fact, our kids are going up to Washington, D.C. next week to present to the National 4-H's what they learned last summer at Hammock Greens. We're going to open up a food bank to provide food to the neighborhood. And then that's replicatable. We're going to build out wherever there's a Cisco in the country, a FreshPoint. We'll build a container farm right next door. We'll bring the nonprofit. We'll provide vocational education, nutrition, and make a difference, and not only with jobs, but making a difference from a cultural aspect in the inner cities.
So two things that came out of that I just heard from you, which actually is part of my next question. One is, I guess that's why Elon Musk's brother is hitting those areas, right? It's probably the more cultural side of it, right? Trying to teach people perhaps how to eat better, right? And also maybe there's a future here. Maybe there's a future industry in these areas that are, they're what they used to build there, what they used to do there is not necessarily there.
Exactly. Right? Yep.
The question I was going to bring up, which you kind of just touched on it, was, can this be repeated in different markets? And if so, what is stopping it? What is stopping from doing it? Obviously, you just said there's Cisco Fresh division. I'm sure it's in different markets, but why don't you go into that?
Well, we're looking, there's really nothing stopping it, just a matter of time and raising capital. The challenge is we're very fortunate to get the relationship with Cisco FreshPoint. We also spent 10 months and a lot of money in getting the compliance, because Cisco wouldn't run with us unless we had the compliance. Reason why we feel, though, the containers too is the most replicatable part of the business model. For instance, to give you an idea, let's say one of these big farms in Newark, big factory, E. coli breaks out. It can wipe out the whole factory. E. coli breaks out in one of our farms, we shut the container down. We're not out of business. We got one container shifted. As a matter of fact, when there was an E. coli breakout of romaine lettuce out west in California, we shifted 4 of the containers to do all romaine. And in less than 4 weeks from seeding, we're now have a lot of romaine to sell to the market when it was a major commodity and shortage. So that aspect gives us a lot of flexibility, the modular aspect of it, but also that gives us a lot of flexibility to go take these and build these parks in very small areas of land. We have an idea of putting them underneath even highways, like underneath Interstate 95 in the dead spaces there. Work with the federal government to do economic development zones underneath the highways. And so we'll be replicating. The next spot will be Orlando, probably Atlanta, and then Raleigh, North Carolina. And if things work out with that, O'Leary group, they're in charge of going to North Dakota and providing jobs as an economic development in North Dakota. And we know the weather's extreme. So, these are insulated shipping containers. You build a common entrance through them, so you're not going in and out of everyone. And you're dealing with the snow and the cold weather just the same way you're dealing with the extreme heat in Miami. So it's just a matter of time, the evolution of the industry, but also raising capital. It's definitely,
I see that. I see that. I mean, do you find that obviously right now Cisco is a amazing partner, and you have already created the I don't want to say cross the red tape that you needed, but you've been able to acquire the paperwork that's needed to play in that field, right? And it's been able to close that deal. And now obviously this can be repeated in different areas, but let's just say like this area here, like you said, you brought up Newark, right? It's a lot of restaurants in the area, and obviously not too far from here is Manhattan, and then you have Brooklyn, and then you have, I mean, are these trailers able to be brought up here and built here? A, and B, do you find that perhaps permitting is an issue, or do you think that that's something that can be handled pretty, with ease, since you guys already have handled this in other areas where at times, perhaps it's a little bit more difficult? I mean, being under a highway,
yeah, sure,
difficult, federal, right? You're involved.
Yeah. I mean, you live and learn. We had to, this process. Half of this process is educating the authorities too. I mean, so like for instance, we had 10 containers in Miami, and the zoning guys came down and they were like, you've got to put, we were sitting on cinder block footers that went into the ground, and they were like, you got to put a concrete slab on every one of those and steel bolt them down. We got hurricane code and all this stuff. I said, no. This isn't a mobile home. It might look like a mobile home to you. You know what I mean? But I mean, it's not a trailer park. I said, this is, there's no safety, there's no factor that's going to affect the safety. These things ain't going nowhere. I mean, with the weight, all the science shows it, all that stuff. So actually that we educated them, and then that turned into a little bit of a negative turned into a positive, because they did say, we asked them, we eventually want to stack them. And they said, well, if you stack them, you definitely got to put the concrete slab in. But they did say if you put the concrete slabs in, they'll let us stack 3 high.
Oh, wow.
So a 30 container park can become a 90 in a 3,000 acre farm in a half city block. So that we learned on that, and that's going to happen everywhere we go with their codes. But it's just going to be adjusting. There shouldn't be any barriers from that aspect. I mean, I was anticipating coming up and putting one in your driveway.
Well, I actually, when I originally met you, my son goes to school in Jersey City. So right away, I thought about Jersey City, right? I actually thought about their school, then I thought about my daughter's school. My daughter goes to school in Washington Township, and how, again, these are things that, if anybody has driven around schools in the last 2 years because of COVID, every school has a trailer out there because they had, I don't know, I think they had all their chairs in there. I have no idea why every school had a trailer.
Sure, yeah.
But every school that you drove around had a trailer outside. And then when I remember when meeting you, I realized, I'm like, wow, they already have this thing. So it can't be like, oh, we don't have space for one. And a lot of these schools, the issues, I'm going to leave public schools out, but let's just say private schools.
Perhaps like the charter schools and private schooals.
Yeah. Maybe they can control their lunch a little bit more, right? Their lunch contracts a little bit more. And we know that these kids are eating, crap, right? They're getting crap. Some of them don't even want to eat that stuff, but they're just forced to eat it. And who knows what these leafy greens can bring, right? Can provide. I found this as a really, as just like almost like very how is it, like when you were going in, like when they were heading out west, it's like so early on, while it's
we're pioneering it, baby.
Pioneering it. It's like it's such a vast amount, like the little restaurants, right? Like I was thinking, I was in France last summer, and I see all the little farmers markets, right? Like, okay, wow, look at all this. It could be a couple trailers set up in a farmer's market where, again, offering another means to a business that is listen, if the weather's harsh, it can wipe that out, right? And then what happens when it wipes it out? It's going to raise the cost, right? So, that's something that you guys can actually come in and all of a sudden, boom, be a partner. And I know right now with everything that's going on with inflation and everything, like the price of meat and all this other crap, restaurants are having to raise their prices, and then people are like, oh, how do I do this? How do I compete? To me, it looks like this is all, again, so early on, pioneering that it can create so many sub industries within this industry that's not going nowhere, obviously, because we're not going to stop eating, right? We're going to continue eating,
and it's going to be more difficult to get fresh produce.
And that's the part that gets me, right? So
I mean, look what happened with the truckers going, basically on strike, and diesel prices went up, and then you couldn't get the shipment of seeds and things like that. They were on trucks and shipping containers outside of the ports. That all played into the whole, sustainability and supply side issues that I never even anticipated. Those were difficult challenges for the country, but they played right into us being a solution.
Exactly. That's kind of what I'm getting at. You start, as the more you're going through this, is so early on, you start to see that perhaps the initial drive has now evolved to hit so many different avenues. Now look what I can, look what this particular solution can do, not just here, but look how it can do here. And while the idea is obviously to build, to make food, grow food or grow greens and obviously deliver them to the local market. I want to say that it crosses or checks so many more boxes when you do have these issues that come up, right? Where perhaps we have a gas shortage, right? Or we have a gasoline spike, diesel spike, weather, right? Luckily this year we've had no snow up here in the Northeast, but we can have a dry season like you were talking about in these two counties that honestly, I didn't know that all this stuff basically came from two counties in the country.
Yeah. The green leafies,
it's wild. It's wild. I mean, so many insights that we just have had in this very short time. We cannot go into everything here because we could be talking here for hours and still just scratch the surface, right? But what I wanted to share was the amazing insight that you can get just in this little glimpse, right? This is true to me. It's truly a future industry, right? It's bringing an old industry, right? The old way of doing things, bringing it into the future. Because listen, man, we're going to be around. It's not like this is going to end tomorrow. We're going to continue living. We're going to continue having situations. We're going to continue having this same issue of where we're going to get food from. And this can be the beginning to something new, right? Like he said, he created their initial idea was to hit this. They didn't even think about what could potentially come out of it, right? So the necessity of food is not going anywhere, right? It's going to be needed still. And we're going to need innovation to be able to bring this into everyone's lives, not just a specific group, everyone, right? Everyone needs to be able to have access to something like this. And the only way to do that is by people like Ron and his partners and Hammock Greens and other companies that are going to do this as well, to bring this to market, bring this to your community, right? To me, this industry has so much. It's so early on. It has so much to bring into the future and bring into today, right? This is the type of forward thinking that we need, right? This is the type of forward thinking that we need, adapting, adjusting to the everyday issues that are happening in our families, in our business, right? In ourselves, right? The opportunities that you get to remind yourself to just keep going. I know it's easy. Like if we were in a farm where perhaps it was dry, it's easy to say, oh, now what do I do? Right? Well, guess what? Even these farms could potentially have these trailers on them to have
absolutely
a backup, right?
They could become year-round farmers.
Exactly. And that's the part that I look at is like these very farms that perhaps were the 2 zip codes in the country. They cannot just be a one-way anymore. They're become a 2-way street. So I find this to be amazing. We're going to definitely put some links to Hammock Greens on this thing, as well as obviously Ron and his partners' information. But Ron, obviously thank you for on here. But what any final thoughts you want to leave the people of the show on?
No, I first of all, I want to thank you, and because Hammock Greens, without you realizing its success was you played a part in it. As you know, my background, losing everything through COVID, having to start over, and then meeting the group that we're involved in, next level with the Edge, and meeting you initially, and just guys that said just say, hey, you got this. You know what I mean? Just clear your head, forget the past, move forward. You did it before, you did it again. And that really played a lot into getting Hammock Greens successful and now on the road to major growth. And the other aspect is, never stop dreaming. To give you an idea, I'll never forget this, but if you ever went to Epcot Center at Disney World, did you ever go there?
I actually been to Disney. And that's the place we never gone because the kids were very little.
Well, I mean, I went when I was 15 years old. And Epcot, they had this thing called the Land, and they were doing what we're doing now inside Epcot when I was 15.
Wow.
And that's because they were visionaries. They were doing the hydroponic farming, growing out of the root, the lettuces, the tomatoes, and it's just an application of entrepreneurs believing, taking a concept, taking a model, and forging it forward. And for everybody out there in the audience, whether you have an electrical contracting company, whether you're a hammock, you've got an agriculture, you're in technology, or you just got a paper route up in North Jersey and you're a kid, be the best at what you do and never lose your dreams, never stop dreaming, and just forward with your vision.
Wow, that's amazing. I know that this channel originally started as a means to be able to share with contractors, perhaps what the life of a contractor looks like, right? And perhaps you may be watching this. Obviously, you probably, if you're going this far, you're super intrigued about this whole thing. And then at the same time, you're like, what the fuck does all this have to do with electrical contracting, right? So the reason I'm sharing things like this is because where me and Ron met, he just said he was in a place where perhaps he was doubting if this was possible again, right? He was doubting his dream again, right? And this community that we've built through our brotherhood, through our Edge program has not just helped me, has not just helped him, has helped a ton of guys, right? Continue to dream, right? And continue to believe in the dream, but not just believe in the dream and continue it, but actually taking action on this dream, which is, if you follow this channel, you listen to me constantly say, take action. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just take a fucking step forward. So perhaps this is something that gives you an idea. Perhaps you have a groundbreaking idea. Perhaps you have a way of doing, bringing a futuristic thing into your current trade that you do. Go for it. Go for it. Because without that, you ain't gonna get over there. You won't get to that futuristic land that he saw in Epcot, right? Believe in your dreams. Follow your dreams, and have the balls to fucking be wrong, man. Because only when you figure out that you were wrong is how you're going to figure out how to be right. So, I want to thank Ron for joining. I want to thank everybody for following, for obviously listening to this whole thing. As always, thank you for listening. If any of this information you find valuable, hit the subscribe button, as well as remember to share it with someone who needs to hear this. And feel free to, comment below. And as always, man, catch you on the next one.